Welcome to Uniquely UCF Sociology, a podcast production of the Department of Sociology at the University of Central Florida. I'm your host, Dr. Ramon Hinojosa. Uniquely UCF Sociology is a podcast that explores the research and creative efforts of those who are doing the good work of sociology. You want to know what sociology is and what contributions sociology makes to improving our lives? Well, you've come to the right podcast. It's Uniquely UCF Sociology. Today, I'm speaking with BeeBen Khallouq, a doctoral student in the Department of Sociology at the University of Central Florida. Bee's research specializes in health inequalities and explores the ways that race, gender, and sex can and do influence health outcomes. Bee has recently received a grant from the Peter F. McManus Foundation to study illicit substance use among pregnant women. She was also awarded the Dolores A. Ausing Fellowship, an award that recognizes talented doctoral students who bring diversity of ideas here to UCF. Hello, Bee, and welcome to the show.
Thank you, Ray. Thanks for having me.
Oh, well, thank you for taking the time out of your day to chat with me. So let's begin by just asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself. Where did you do your undergrad? Where did you do your master's? And why are you here at UCF?
So my academic journey started a long time ago. The first time I tried to finish school, I didn't finish. I dropped out my second year. I always thought that I was just not prepared. I'm a first-gen student. I have immigrant parents that don't have more than a high school education. Probably my mom doesn't even have a primary education. So I think I just didn't know what college would entail. And so I left school for 10 years, 14 years to be exact. And I took a job at Starbucks Coffee Company. I did that for 11 years out of those 14 years in between. I had a rather successful career, I think. And then I went back to school at California State University, Northridge. That's my alma mater. And I did school in a very different way. I was awarded at the time what was called the Core NIMH Fellowship. And so it's careers, right, in research for minority students. And so I was part of that program for 3 years. And for 3 years, I actually prepared to be in a doctoral program. That's what I did. I took advanced stats classes, and I attained a degree in psychology and a degree in child development. And I also completed a minor in human sexuality. Which turned out to be really more something geared towards like queer studies and LGBTQ studies, I think. And then I went off to University of Cincinnati where I did my master's. I did my master's in experimental psychology. And at the time there was a track offered for statistics and research methods. So I walked out of that master's program with a very large knowledge of statistics and methods, I think. And so, at the time that I did my master's, I had to take a little bit of a forced break. I was sick. And so I decided that it was time to kind of check out for a little bit. And I did. I stayed 5 years, again, outside the classroom. But this time I was working. So I took a job at UCF College of Medicine. I was a statistical coordinator for their research program. And I did that. It was really a blessing in disguise. I supported over 400 research projects in my tenure there. Wow. And so I supported them at different levels because students come with different needs. So that allowed me an opportunity to continue to do research and expand my breadth and knowledge of research while I did that. And then when I decided to come back to school, which was 3 years ago, I applied very widely. And applied widely because I had gained an identity as a researcher and a scientist. I was not attached to a discipline anymore. For a very long time, I had described myself as a psychologist and then an applied mathematician. And so I realized that attaching to a label for me, it was kind of limiting the options and how I was thinking about my own career and my own academic trajectory. So I applied so broad. I applied to biostatistics programs, to public health programs, sociology programs, and here I am. And so that's kind of like my academic journey, Ray.
Wow, that is quite a journey. I mean, you come much better prepared than I would say most of our traditional students who are coming right out of an undergraduate degree.
I think it sets me apart. I think it was quite a circuitous path, I always think. I think the way that I always saw it as a loop. It was always a loop for me. It was never a stop. I always saw it as I have to loop back, and how can I possibly loop back in the best way possible? And so yeah, it's one of those situations where life gives you lemons, you make lemonade kind of thing.
Well, that's like so. What we typically see are students who get a master's, get a PhD, and then go on to have research careers. And so you've had the research career, and now you're coming back to get a PhD. And so, what does the PhD mean for you?
That's a great question. So a couple of things. I think for me, the PhD was an opportunity to increase wages in the positions that I've been at. So that's one thing. But mostly it was the idea that I started something and I needed to finish it. So my stop the first time around was I had so many mentors invest in me those 3 years in undergrad. And when I went on to my master's, I've been so fortunate to have so many mentors that never stopped investing in my growth. And so for me, this journey, I had already told myself that's what I was doing. And along the way, it comes with more financial rewards, right? But the reality is that I just want to give back, I think, to other students that are in this trajectory. I've not done this by myself. I think I've been rather successful, but I'd be foolish to think that I did this all on my own. I don't know. So I really can't wait to finish, because I think there's been a lot of people. It's like a long marathon to me. And there's been a lot of people along the way that I've collected that consistently ask me, how you doing? How's the program going? What do you need? And do I need to do anything for you? And I think it's like a small like B crowd. And I think that's part of also been really important to me, that having that support is like super important. Yeah.
Well, that's incredible. And so the PhD is about finishing what you started, but it sounds like it's also very much about being in a position to help others who might be like you, where they're first generation students who are just starting. I mean, that's pretty incredible. So
That's
I think
really important to me, Ray. Like, I think being able to support other students. I started late, and students, it didn't have to be that way for me. I think if I would have had more direction,
Mhm.
I like to tell a story. I taught my sister how to read. I was only 8 years old and she was 4. And I taught her how to read. By the time she started kindergarten, she had a second grade like reading level. And I think my passion for teaching was probably it just, I don't know, it's been part of who I am, and I do have that passion, I think, so yeah.
You know what? It's interesting when we talk to other sociologists, you tend to hear that as well. There's just something about this generative spirit, this idea that one wants to give back to the next generation and provide mentorship and really help people through some of the experiences that would have been beneficial to have help when we were there in that position.
Yeah.
So that's pretty incredible. Well, tell me about the McManus Fellowship Award that you received, or excuse me, the McManus Grant, I should say.
Yeah. So this was one of those things that, so I was taught by one of my many mentors to never tell myself no. So two pieces of advice that I got going into my qualifying exam. Actually, one of them was you, and it stuck with me. You told me to write for myself. And you told me, approach the exam in a way that you are writing for yourself. Like, there's nothing that you're going to write there that you're not going to write for yourself, because otherwise it becomes 7 days of writing that you never used, right? And why would you want to do
Right.
that? And so So I kept that piece of advice, and then and so I did. Walking out of the exam, I felt really terrible because I had challenged myself to write for myself in a way that I hadn't done before. And I thought I had made the exam a little bit harder for myself when I shouldn't have. But the exam was submitted August 7th. The application for the grant was due August 15th. And I knew, so somebody approached me and said, do you think we can write this grant? And I said, sure. I had 7 days to write a grant. But I had already spent time writing for my qualifying exam. So what I did, I took the qualifying exam response, which apparently was a good response because I got the award, and I retooled it to this project. And so in my response, I was proposing to do narrative interviews for medical students. And so what I did is I proposed to do narrative interviews for pregnant women that are substance users. And the methodology was identical. And my collaborator is an obstetrics physician. So she knew the impact, at least the clinical impact. So I said, give me something. I need an introduction, 1 page long, and then I'll filter it in. So we did that. We submitted a grant asking for $75,000, 7 days post qualifying exam, hoping that, I don't know, I think we were just both going through the motions. And so the grant got awarded.
That's really incredible. I mean, there are career researchers that struggle to put together those sums of money even throughout a career. So to get this even before you've achieved the PhD is really quite incredible, I think.
I don't know how you explain it. Thanks for saying that, Ray. So yeah, we have $75,000. We actually just started working on the grant last week. We had our first grant meeting. And one of the things I've learned about being in research, people really like it when you bring in money into institutions, and I think is to not be naive about that. I think one of the things that I can think of, because so I think oftentimes we can get caught up like how I'm going to pull this off. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I got a little shocked. I have no clue how I'm going to pull this off. But then on last week we had a meeting. And it was such an incredible meeting because I solicited the help of the hospital, like marketing department. I was like, I need flyers. I need this. I need that. And they're like, sure. And they're doing all this at no cost because the benefit for them is that they get to be part of something bigger than us, right? They get to be part of helping a patient population that is largely underserved in the hospital. And I think everybody knows that. And it just, I don't know, you just needed a set of people to kind of push it. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right. I think that institutions tend to appreciate grant getters and people who are pulling in money, but it isn't just about the money, right? It's that the money is a resource to be able to engage in this complex work that we call sociology, right? It's about paying participants. It's about paying for advertising to get the word out. It's about paying for transportation so that we're not inconveniencing participants, maybe even participant stipends that can encourage them to come in. Plus, then you've got things like transcription of the interviews. You've got your efforts on there. Of course, you need to be paid for the work that you're doing. And so, I think that all of these things go into what these grant dollars are for. And unfortunately, I think in this day and age, the grant scene is much more scarce than it used to be. And so it becomes much more difficult to secure these sorts of funding to do the necessary research that you're doing. And so really quite amazing. I have to say, I'm very impressed, and I've been impressed since I've known you, Bee. So, so tell us a little bit about what it's like to be a grad student. And I understand that you've been out and you've held professional positions before. And so you sort of stepped back from that and moved into grad school. So talk about that a little bit. What's that like for you?
So I think you're right, because I was I was in school, then out, then back in, then out. In a way, I think those in out kind of experiences helped me prepare this time around. I love being a graduate student. I just, I love learning. I love waking up every day and doing something that I love to do. I think the only the only other comparison that I have is like I love serving coffee when I was at Starbucks. I was so happy making lattes. And so I know what a sense of gratification doing what you love brings. And I was lucky to experience that at a very young age. I think a lot of us, as we get older, we shuffle a lot, quite a bit. And then psychologists talk about this, like, what's it called? I don't know, the end of life, when you kind of acknowledge who you've become. I think I've been lucky to know who I wanted to become and who I was through my path. So every day, I feel very lucky to be a graduate student. A typical day for me is I wake up early, I write in the mornings. For me, that's my time where I'm freshest. I write in the mornings. I love learning new things. I also love helping colleagues. So oftentimes I do like Zoom sessions with colleagues to work together side by side. And if we were in a non-pandemic world, I'll probably do it in person. So I do that. And there's something to be said about everything I gain is for myself. Everything that I gain, it's like being deposited in like kind of like my toolbox. And I think one of the biggest rewards for me of being a graduate student is this toolbox is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I don't think I ever imagined me being that person. Like, I just don't imagine me being that person. Like, I have a huge toolbox, right? And I use the reference of a toolbox because it stays in that box until you need it, and you don't even know you have it.
Yes.
And it's either you need it for the next thing, whatever you're doing, or you need it to help somebody else. And I think for me, there's a lot to be said about being able to help somebody else. Like, it's just, I think it's kind of sounds silly, but I really do love helping other people, but I happen to like helping other students. And so whether that be like my mentees or whether that be my colleagues, if I can help you, I'm going to do it. And it feels really good to open that toolbox and be like, 1994, here it is. So, yeah, I have it, like something that is so old that you thought you would never use. There's a sense of gratification in doing that, and a lot of my work has taken a very like applied spin to it, because I also like my work to make an impact, right? So we were talking about the Peter McNemon's grant. Like, it was, for me, it was not, you're right, it wasn't just about the money, right? It's about serving a patient population that was being overlooked at the institution where I'm at. And I can find many things that are overlooked in medicine in that way, that if I can bring in a grant or I can bring in my expertise to change it, it doesn't have to be that way, right? And so a lot of people think like, I want to change the world. I don't want to change the world. I just want to change like my space a little bit and make a few changes here and there, So.
And in the process, you're making the world a better place for other people.
I try.
And I think that that's laudable. Again, as I say, I continue to be impressed, Bee. And so, so graduate school is often difficult on personal lives. And so one of the things that future students like to know is, how does a grad student maintain that work-life balance, or do they?
I think for myself, it shifts. So I've gone from being very balanced to very unbalanced. Like most things in life is just that way, right? Like, to me, maybe because I'm older, I have learned to know that life goes up and down, up and down. And so I never went in thinking that I was going to be a well-balanced student. I went in knowing that I was going to feel off balance, and I was going to have to stop and catch my breath. And then I was going to kind of take advantage of the easy ride, both personally and academically. So I'm married, and so I have to do this constant marital dance, right, with a partner. And he's in school, but he's an undergrad. And I think the undergraduate experience is quite different than the PhD experience, right? I'm pretty sure he looks at me like I'm a little crazy from time to time, like you're off to the next thing, seriously. So I have to be able to negotiate not only with him, but with other relatives, right? So I'm also very like fortunate that it's just him and I here in Florida, and there are some families away. So there's reduced expectations of what I'm expected to produce as actually a Mexican woman that is like the matriarch of my family. Like I have those expectations have dissipated, you know, so I feel very good about that. My mom is the matriarch, and in my absence of my mom, I always get called upon. And I think that that's been really hard for my extended family to understand that I am doing something else right now and I can't attend to that. And so being okay with like letting people down is also very important. But again, I think I kind of knew that, right? Like going into the PhD program, I knew that I was going to have ups and downs. And so I started school with 3 rules for myself. I would not jeopardize my mental health. That was number 1. Like I could not jeopardize my health. So if one of my professors was going to get an email of like, I can't submit this now, it's because I need sleep, and I need sleep to stay balanced, right? And so that only happened a few times, I think, but I couldn't jeopardize my mental health, right? So that was one of the things that I couldn't do, and I haven't done. I think I'm very lucky that I haven't fallen into depression or anxiety, like a lot of graduate students tend to fall into. I've been very lucky in that way because I told myself that I would be cognizant, so not to fall that way, right? The other thing is I would not work Friday nights. Friday nights is date night. And I will not work Friday nights. It doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter what is going on. It doesn't matter the deadline. And that's really helped me balance out the expectations with my spouse, right? Because it's Friday night and people know. My colleagues will text me and be like, have a fun date night. I'm going to work till 11, but they understand, right? Because it's such a part of who I am. Not working Friday nights. Friday nights is off the limits. If we do something on Friday nights that's departmental related, we make a quick appearance and we jet out because that's our time. And
So
then
it sounds like you've been very effective at being able to manage the stress that sometimes comes with the expectations of grad school, and not just the work itself, but the time commitment that it takes to do it, and how that may impact the ability to interact with people outside of this setting. And so stress management sounds like it's been the key to your success so far.
Yeah, I think a lot of that too.
Excellent. So what's your future look like? Like, where do you see yourself headed after the PhD? And I know we chatted about this just a little bit before the session started, but where do you see yourself once the PhD is completed?
So I don't know is the big question, is the real answer. But I can see myself in multiple spaces. And I think that's been really important for me. Like I could see myself in the applied setting, and I've been able to kind of put a list of things that are like beneficial if I'm in the applied setting, right? And I can see myself in the academic setting, and I've been able to create a list of pros and cons of both. The other thing that has helped me as I think of my future is that nothing's fixed, right? Like I can choose one now and I can switch over the other way. I think one of the challenges in doing that is making sure that I engage in some of the expectations that are necessary in academia and some of the expectations in the applied setting. That's a little bit challenging because that means that I feel like I've had to work for a very long time for the past year and a half or 2. I've done the dance in both, right? So I've engaged in activities that will make me look competitive for the applied setting, and I've engaged in activities that will make me look competitive in the academic setting. And it's a little tiring, right? When you're doing kind of multiple things. And
Absolutely.
so, but I think I've I've kind of thought I have to do that until I decide where I'm going to go. And I'm not going to limit myself. I'm going to continue to do both until I decide where I go. And the thing that must be present in what I do is I have to feel like I'm making an impact and a change. Like I know that at my core, right? Like I thought I was changing the world serving lattes, and like I want that. I want to feel very good at the end of my workday. I want to
And
feel like I made a difference, I made a change, and I'm making this little space a better space. And I think hanging on to that, Ray, like that core aspect of what I want in a job is super essential, because then I don't worry about like the other things that come with this deciding jobs, you know, because as long as they both offer that, my negotiation looks like that. Will I have an impact on students? Will I be able to teach? How much would I be able to teach, right? And how much autonomy will I have in a job is another essential for me. Like I don't like jobs where you go in, you clock in and you clock out. Right? That's just not me. Like, if I go in and I get really 2 good hours of work, I need to be able to leave, because that's it. Like my brain power is out. And so I think those are the two things where I see myself. A job that gives me lots of autonomy, yeah, to feel good about what I do.
excellent. And I would say serving caffeinated drinks to people in need is really doing good work. So, as somebody who needs my morning coffee, I can really appreciate that. I did want to go back to this difference between the applied job and the academic job. And so for the members of our listening audience, to be clear, one of the things that happens with an applied job are things like research report writing, right? And so there may be lots of report writing that probably doesn't see the light of day outside the organization, whereas an academic job may be more along the lines of publishing articles in an academic journal. And so you're actually publishing for a specific audience. And so that's my read on it. What would you say that the main differences are?
So for the two jobs that I'm looking for, that's exactly that, right? So where I see myself in the applied studies is in a hospital, where I would exactly be writing reports, doing evaluations on patient outcomes, improving the patient experience. And then for the academic job, it would be more like, publishing for other sociologists, right, out there, other scientists. I think the helping aspect for me comes, I'm either going to help patients and medical students in training, right, physicians, or I'm going to help undergraduate and graduate students. But the tasks are different, right? Like the impact that you have is rather different. I also don't know, one of the things that I think in the next 2 years while I'm still in school, I want to learn how to make research more reachable, because so my parents, like I said, like my parents have no clue what I do, right? Like they have no clue what I do. They think I'm a scientist and they know I work with doctors, but they don't understand what I do. And I think if my parents don't understand what I do, that's kind of sad to me. Like, and that's true of many other people in my circle, right? In my family, they're like, "Oh, she's a teacher." Like, I'm not a teacher.
Yeah, I don't think that's unusual. I don't think my parents understand what it is I do either. So,
but I would love to see some of my research, for example, in H&M magazine, strictly for men, Cosmopolitan. Like sometimes I see things written out there for a more broader audience. And I want to learn how to do that, because I think that oftentimes in an academic setting, I can get engaged and have like a really good conversation with somebody like you, same level, same kind of discipline, same kind of like educational background. And it's a really good conversation. But then I'm like socially awkward in other spaces because I don't know how to get off that kind of talk or like frame of mind or thinking, right? Like I could be at the dog park and then somebody asks me something and then I find myself using words that make no sense. And I can tell because they look at me weird. People look at me weird. They're like, oh, that's odd, or that's really interesting, But if I said, hey, I write for Cosmopolitan, or I do a health section in Life and Style magazine, or I'm a columnist for the New York Times, like I know my work is getting elsewhere, right? Yeah, anyways.
Excellent. And that's exactly one of the reasons that we wanted to do a podcast series, is because we want to be able to get the word out so that people understand what it is that a sociologist does and what the work is like. And I think you've given us an excellent look sort of behind the curtains, if you will, at what it's like to be a student, what it's like to be a researcher, how one pulls it all in to make it work. And so, Bee, I'd like to thank you for your time today and coming onto the show and sharing your experiences with us. So thank you.
Thank you.
I'd also like to thank you, our audience, for taking time from your busy day to listen in as we discuss all things that are uniquely UCF sociology. This is Dr. Ramon Hinojosa saying thank you, and we'll hope you join us next week.